You've been told something that feels simple, clean, and satisfying, that narcissists are evil, that they're heartless, calculated, and almost inhuman. And after everything you've experienced, the confusion, the emotional manipulation, the constant self-doubt, that label feels right. It gives your mind relief. It gives your pain a clear enemy. But here's the uncomfortable truth that most people avoid. The moment you reduce narcissists to evil monsters, you actually lose your ability to fully understand what happened to you. And when you don't understand it, you don't completely heal from it. You just carry it forward into the next situation, the next relationship, the next person who feels familiar in a way you can't quite explain. And that's where the real problem begins. Because what you don't fully understand, you are more likely to repeat. And there's a deeper reason why that happens that most people never realize until it's too late. The real issue isn't just that you were hurt. It's that you were confused while being hurt. Narcissistic abuse doesn't hit you in a straight line. It doesn't come in obvious, predictable patterns that your brain can easily process. Instead, it pulls you in with intensity, then destabilizes you slowly. One moment you feel chosen, valued, seen in a way that feels rare. The next moment you feel ignored, dismissed, or subtly criticized in ways that make you question your own perception. And that back and forth doesn't just affect your emotions, it rewires how you interpret reality. You start analyzing everything. You start overthinking simple interactions. You begin to wonder if you're the problem. And the more you try to figure it out, the deeper you get pulled into something that was never designed to make sense in the first place. And that's exactly why so many people stay stuck far longer than they ever expected. Here's where the perspective shift begins to happen, and it's not comfortable at first. Narcissists are not operating from a place of strength, even though it looks that way on the surface. That confidence, that charm, that ability to walk into a room and take control of attention, it feels powerful, almost magnetic. But underneath that image is something extremely unstable, a fragile sense of identity that depends on constant validation, control, and external reinforcement just to stay intact. And once you understand that, their behavior starts to make more sense, not in a way that excuses it, but in a way that removes the illusion of power you may have unconsciously given them. Because what looks like control is often just fear in disguise, and what looks like confidence is often just a carefully maintained performance that starts to crack the moment it's challenged. And this is where things become even more complex, because narcissists don't just randomly choose people. They are drawn to certain traits. Empathy, patience, emotional depth, the ability to understand others even when they're difficult. These are strengths in healthy environments. But in the presence of a narcissist, those same strengths become entry points for emotional manipulation. They mirror your energy in the beginning. They reflect back your values, your interests, your emotional tone. It feels natural, almost effortless, like you've finally met someone who understands you without you having to explain yourself. And that connection feels real because your side of it is real. But what you don't realize in that moment is that you're not connecting to a stable personality. You're connecting to a reflection that was designed to pull you in. And once that connection forms, something subtle begins to shift. Something that most people don't notice until they're already deeply invested. The shift doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual, almost invisible at first. Small changes in tone, slight withdrawal of attention, comments that seem harmless on the surface, but leave you thinking about them later. And when you try to address it, the response doesn't bring clarity, it creates more confusion. Maybe they deny it. Maybe they flip the situation. Maybe they make you feel like you're overreacting. And slowly, your focus moves away from their behavior and onto your own reactions. You start monitoring yourself more, adjusting your words, trying to avoid triggering whatever caused the shift. And without realizing it, you begin to lose your natural sense of emotional stability. You're no longer just being yourself. You're adapting to an environment that keeps changing the rules. And that's where the real psychological impact begins to take hold. This is also where trauma bonding starts to form, and it's one of the most misunderstood parts of narcissistic abuse. It's not just attachment, it's conditioning. The cycle of being valued and then devalued creates a pattern in your brain. When you receive attention again after a period of emotional distance, it feels more intense, more meaningful, almost like relief. And your mind starts associating that relief with the person who caused the discomfort in the first place. So instead of pulling away, you lean in. Instead of questioning the pattern, you try to restore the connection. And this creates a loop that feels incredibly strong, even when it's clearly unhealthy. You're not just attached to the person, you're attached to the emotional cycle. And breaking that cycle requires a level of awareness that most people don't develop until they've already gone through significant damage. Now here's where the idea of narcissists being evil starts to fall apart in a very important way. If they were consistently cruel, consistently harmful, consistently negative, your brain would reject them much earlier. You wouldn't bond the same way. You wouldn't question yourself to this extent. The reason the connection feels so strong is because it wasn't all bad. There were moments of genuine seeming connection, moments where things felt aligned, moments where you felt understood, and your mind holds onto those moments, trying to reconcile them with the negative ones. But what most people don't realize is that those positive moments were not a stable foundation. They were part of the cycle itself. And once you understand that, the entire dynamic starts to look different. But there's still one more layer that most people overlook. Even after gaining this awareness, many people find themselves still thinking about the narcissist, still feeling something, still questioning why it hasn't fully let go. And this is where they get pulled back into confusion again, because they assume that lingering emotion means there was something real that they lost. But in reality, what they're feeling is the imprint of intensity, not the presence of stability. The highs, the attention, the emotional charge of the experience, it leaves a mark. And your brain doesn't easily forget something that felt that powerful. But power doesn't equal health. Intensity doesn't equal consistency. And once you begin to separate those two, something inside you starts to settle in a way that feels unfamiliar at first, but becomes incredibly freeing over time. Because the moment you stop seeing narcissists as powerful monsters, you also stop seeing yourself as someone who was powerless. You begin to understand that what kept you there wasn't weakness, it was conditioning, emotional investment, and a lack of clarity about what was actually happening. And when that clarity comes in, your decisions start to change. You don't chase the same patterns. You don't ignore the same red flags. You don't feel the same pull toward people who create confusion instead of stability. And that shift doesn't just protect you. It transforms how you experience relationships altogether, but only if you fully accept what you've just realized. So no, narcissists are not evil monsters, but that doesn't make them harmless. In many ways, they're more dangerous than that, because they don't just hurt you directly. They confuse you, they destabilize you, they make you question your own reality while you're trying to hold on to something that feels meaningful. And if you don't understand how that works, you can lose yourself trying to figure them out. But now you see the pattern. You see the cycle, you see the difference between intensity and stability. And once you truly see it, you don't just move on, you move differently in a way that makes it much harder for anyone to pull you into that kind of dynamic again.